Daryl Anka channels the being he calls Bashar. This being is often referred to as an Asani alien or his higher self, which is in resonance with this being that he calls Bashar. Bashar gave us what he calls sacred circuitry, and this circuitry is supposed to be able to direct energy so that it can flow and move in different ways, in ways that would be beneficial to the different sacred circuitries. In this video, we're going to look at what these sacred circuitries actually are in relationship to plasma and energy in general. Because, as you may or may not know, NASA has said that most of the universe, 99.9% of it, is composed of plasma. This means that everything we see outside of the Earth and a lot of the things we don't see here on the Earth are actually composed of plasma. And taking that into account, and then the different plasma physics research that has shown that 2D geometric structures can actually create 3D structures when plasma flows through it, I believe it'd be very wise to look at these different sacred circuitries in terms of how they would impact plasma as it flows through these different circuitries. So with that, let's begin looking at the first one, center. As you can see here, center has a sphere at the center, or a circle, followed by 4 spokes extending at the north, south, east, and west points of this sphere, or the top, bottom, and then left and right. You could also look at this as the points where there's implosion from the top and center, and then the left and right sides where the energy expands after the implosion. This is because all plasmoids, or plasmatoruses, take in energy in their top and bottoms, then cycle it through until there's nowhere else for it to shrink down to, and then implode. In this way, you actually see the left and right spokes as energy expanding out from its center. This would be a great circuitry to use if you wanted to bring energy in to do something like transform that different energy before you did something else with it, such as move it around or, let's say, even charge something up. This is the base level of the sacred circuitry, and I think it's a great place to begin, because if you look at this plasmoid, or plasmatorus, you can see it's imploding at its center constantly in a cyclical process. And with that, let's move on to the second one, expand. As you can see here, the center circle is no longer in the center, and it's now moved into the 4 different spokes on the sacred circuitry. This shows that energy has been stabilized at the edges of the 4 directions, or sacred 4 directions, of this plasmatorus, or plasmoid. This would be a great form to take if you wanted to stabilize your energy structure before you did something else in the center, or even if you wanted to expand it beyond your sphere of influence. Because all individuated plasma has what's called a double layer on its outside. And these double layers are a thin sheath of positively charged ions being held together by the negatively charged ones inside of the sphere. And these double layers actually isolate different plasmoids from their environment and from each other, and they can exist within each other as well. As you can see by this image, here is a series of double layers stacked within a laboratory environment, one within the other. And I believe the expand sacred circuitry is actually a depiction of what it looks like to hold on to and create this double layer. But before we get further into this, I want to invite you to check out my website and sign up for my newsletter, where I have different services that I'm offering, as well as different videos and other things that help you understand yourself inside of a plasma universe. Because I personally believe if more of us understand this, we'll be able to flip and change this world like this. Which brings us to the next one, balance. This one is very similar to expand, except for there's another sphere in the center, or a circle. And this 5th circle actually creates a balance point in which all of the energies are circulating around this sphere in a very synchronized fashion. This would be a great pattern to take for a plasmoid if it wanted to do something like expand into a greater region. And you could probably use this to balance different structures that are out of whack or not being able to sustain themselves much longer. This pattern, well, it's not exactly the most functional because you wouldn't really be able to keep 5 different points in alignment at the same time, but it would be a great place and way to create a balance point in which you could project from moving forward. Looking at the next sacred circuitry, prepare, you can see here that the sphere or circle moves back into the center, followed by the 3 rows of lines, one at the top above the circle, one below, and then one through the middle. I think we could look at these lines as intention moving throughout its sphere, because just like you and I are able to move our attention in different parts of our body, a plasmoid is able to move energy from its center into different areas. In this way, prepare is showing how it's preparing to move its energy around that plasmoid or sphere of energy. And this would be a great way to get yourself or get a plasmoid into the position where it could start to create even more complex structures from wherever it's at in the current cycle of a plasmoid. Looking at the next one, express. This is very similar to prepare, but it's actually just extending from the left and right side, then going up to the next rungs and expanding outwards. This is a way you could actually express or show the energy of a plasmoid before it actually becomes manifest. So in this way, you're expressing the intent to create a larger structure than what you have at any given moment. So you're taking that center circle and beginning to express it in a new or novel way, or in a way that may actually have been done before, but then can be used to build off of in different expressions. Next, we have extend. This one's particularly interesting because you still have that north and south spoke or energy inflow where energy is being moved constantly into that center point. But then at the horizontal line between the sphere and the outer edges, you have 2 angled points that look like V's on either side. And this is actually a great way to create a spark gap or to extend yourself beyond your periphery. This would be done by collapsing energy between those 2 V's, those 2 spokes that are extended at 45-degree angles, and then broadcast that energy along the horizon. You could do this very similarly to how lightning creates sound waves in the environment when lightning strikes, because this looks like a spark gap. And spark gaps are notorious for creating longitudinal waves, especially in plasma, commonly called Langmuir waves. Moving on to the next one, unlock. Here we can see a sphere at the center, followed by 2 lines that extend, creating upward lines pouring up at 45-degree angles. And as you can see, there's a straight line between the sphere or circle at the center and the energy from the horizon. This, to me, looks like a clear channel for energy to escape from that center sphere or circle and flow into the greater structure, and then be recollected at the top and bottom lines before entering back into the toroidal flow. In this way, you'd be able to unlock the energies at the core and allow them to flow freely around the plasma sphere of influence. This would be a great circuitry to use if you wanted to allow the expression of energy to move through the environment without any impedance. Because again, a plasma torus implodes at its center, and when it can't go any farther down into our reality, commonly called the Planck scale, it implodes and then gets expressed as waves that propagate outward. And this pattern would allow it to propagate outward very easily and efficiently. Which moves us on to the next one, flow. Here, there are circles on the top and bottom, followed by the same pattern as unlock. This would be the movement from unlocking that energy into the top and bottom and then letting it flow back through before it implodes yet again. This cyclical process works exactly in line with the previous one, unlock. And it gives us a real good hint on how to enter a flow state and how to remain there. You need to unlock that energy and let it continuously flow through the movement of a torsion field. You could use this sacred circuitry to do things like enter flow states or let energy flow continuously around a plasma torus, allowing energy to freely move continuously. Next, we have receive. This has got energy guidelines on the left and right side, what looks like 3 spokes or a fork, with the 2 spheres in the top, exactly where it was on the previous one, flow. In this way, you could see it as reaching out to the left and right sides and grabbing that energy before bringing it back in towards its center. It's a great way to receive energy from structures outside and other energies from inside the plasmoid. In this way, you could see it as a way that different plasmoids could exchange energy with these different longitudinal energies and bring them back into the center, where it implodes and understands something new or receives new energy. Which is great because it leads us on to the next one, relate. Again, the spheres or circles are still at the top or bottom. Only thing that's changed is the energy and lines that move with that energy flow. Here, this could be seen as taking in that energy and relating it or breaking it down into comparisons so that you can analyze or understand what's changed or what's happened energetically inside of a plasmoid. Because if you take it from receive and then move into relate, you're taking what you received and relating it to your expression, your being, your center. Where again, it implodes, gets changed or transforms, and then spreads out into the environment. Which again brings us to the next one, realize. Here you can see that the spheres or circles have moved to the outer left and right edges, where the 2 up and downs have become spokes which guide the energy back in. However, with the attention here on the outside edges, it's able to stabilize that energy and hold on to its different realization of the energy that was just related to it. It's a brief stabilization before it begins to again transform that energy within itself and express it. Which I believe brings us to the next one, act, which is again collapsing that energy by having your attention and intention here on the outer edges, while the energy still implodes at the center and creates a brand new structure before again being acted upon and then imploding at its center and creating a new structure from that new information it was just realized. Which brings us into the next one, transform. Here we have a spiral looking pattern, which demonstrates, from my perspective, the energy as it becomes different and then is transformed at its center before spiraling outside, just like every plasma torus does, or plasmoid. This base pattern basically looks like how the universe spins around a central axis point, where everything in the universe is imploding at that central point that we commonly call a black hole. This would be a great way to take energy and change it before sharing it again with the outside environment. Which brings us to the next one, connect. Because the most central structure of our universe is actually a pyramidum or a triangle. As triangles are a very sturdy structure that allows implosion to happen and allows it to stabilize at its center. And as you can see here with the triangle and the 4 lines extending outwards towards the different circles on the different lines, this would be a great way to connect with the energy that has been expelled and then bringing it back in towards the center to create a stable structure. So you can move your intention and attention to these different spokes and then connect with outside energy before bringing them back into your center where they become solidified or become a stable structure. And finally, This leads us on to the final one, manifest. Again, it's a triangle in the center, but the 3 spheres or circles on the outside are leading that energy back in to create a stable structure that allows something to manifest or become real. It's the final diagram in the sacred circuitry, and it can be thought of as the culmination of all the other ones before starting the process over again. Because again, plasma toruses or plasmoids are cyclical structures that are self-sustaining, recursive beings or entities, able to be intelligent, react to their environment, and then eventually manifest. As it's been shown in plasma physics, plasmas can create what's called complex plasma or dust plasma that can eventually coalesce into different spheres, which attach to other spheres and create even bigger structures that then can move together. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Also, let's try out this hype feature and see if we can get this video up higher on the chain and see if we can actually get this out in front of other people. My name is Adam David. Thank you.